Of all the Greeks who visited India, Megasthenes is undoubtedly the most well known. In this video, I will try to show you that whatever we know about Megasthenes may not be as reliable as we might think. For someone who was quite well known in the ancient world, we find that we have little information available about Megasthenes himself. We do not know from which region he was from. Some scholars have argued that he belonged to the region of what is now Turkey, but there is little evidence to support this claim. His early life is also a matter of speculation, although there are some scholars who argue that Megasthenes was part of Alexander's Indian campaign. Like other claims about Megasthenes' early life, we do not have enough evidence to prove this claim either. But it is not like there is no reliable evidence about what was Megasthenes doing before he visited India. We do have some credible information about Megasthenes' association with a Greek satrap called Sybaritos. Sybaritos was the Greek satrap of Arcosia and Gedrosia. And through this association with Sybaritos, scholars have argued that Megasthenes lived in the city of Alexandria in Arcosia, which is the modern day Kandahar. Now, coming to the most important aspect of Megasthenes' life, at least for us, is his visit to Patliputra. This claim is also not free from scholarly debate. The cause of this debate is a single sentence from a treatise of a 2nd century Greek historian, Arrian. In his Anabasis of Alexander, there is a sentence in the 6th chapter of the 5th book which can be translated into two different ways. It could be he, that is Megasthenes, says that he repeatedly visited the court of Sandrocotus, or it could be he repeatedly says that he visited the court of Sandrocotus. Since there are two translations of this sentence, it is quite hard for us to say whether there was a single visit or Megasthenes visited India multiple times. And this conundrum also raises doubts about the date of Megasthenes' visit. The most popular view, which we can also call the traditional view, argues that Megasthenes visited India as an ambassador of Seleukos Nicator. Now let's see how those scholars who support this claim find out the date of Megasthenes' visit. Based on Indian sources, we know that the reign of Chandragupta Maurya ended around 297 BC, which means that the visit or visits of Megasthenes must have happened earlier than 297 BC. From the Greek sources, we also know that Seleukos Nicator had sent a second ambassador to Chandragupta, and this ambassador was Deimachus. Now, if Deimachus was the second ambassador to Chandragupta, then we cannot put the date of Megasthenes' visit close to 297 BC. We have to take a gap of some 3 to 5 years, which means that Megasthenes may have visited Chandragupta's court around 302 BC to 300 BC. It is also well known that Megasthenes' visit happened after the treaty of Seleukos Nicator and Chandragupta Maurya. There is a historical consensus that this treaty happened somewhere around 305 BC. Which means that Megasthenes' visit cannot happen before 305 BC. So we have a rough period about when Megasthenes visited India. So the period is 305 BC to 300 BC. This is the traditional view of scholars who believe that Megasthenes was an ambassador of Seleukos Nicator. Now you must be wondering why I keep calling this claim as traditional view. I do this because this seemingly well-established view that Megasthenes visited India after the treaty between Seleukos Nicator and Chandragupta Maurya has been questioned by some scholars. A.B. Bosworth was the first scholar who, in his 1996 article, argued that Megasthenes had visited India before this treaty. In fact, he is of the opinion that this visit of Megasthenes must have happened somewhere between 320 BC and 318 BC. This rather bold claim of Bosworth is again based on one of Arrian's sentences, which goes like this. Megasthenes says that he met Chandragupta, the greatest king of the Indians, and also met Porus, who was yet greater than him. Based on this sentence, Bosworth argues that in this visit of Megasthenes, he also met Porus. Now, what is important for us to remember here is that Porus died around 318-317 BC, which means that if in Megasthenes' visit he also met Porus, then this visit must have happened before Porus' death. And we all know that since Porus died around 318-317 BC, so this visit of Megasthenes must have also happened before 318 BC. So this is the whole argument of Bosworth. Now, he also goes on to show through the various description that has been provided by Megasthenes that it reflects the situation of India after the campaigns of Alexander and not during the time of Chandragupta. But I will not go into these details because what is important for us is that Bosworth not only questions the claim that Megasthenes visited India before the Treaty of Seleukos Nicator and Chandragupta Maurya, but he also questions the widely held belief that Megasthenes was an ambassador of Seleukos Nicator. He points out that there is only a single source that connects Megasthenes with Seleukos Nicator. And this is a text by Clement of Alexandria, who existed around 3rd century AD and 2nd century AD, some 400 years after Megasthenes. In this work, Clement of Alexandria describes Megasthenes as the historian who is associated with Seleukos Nicator. Based on this sentence, historians assume that since Megasthenes is associated with Seleukos Nicator, then it means that Megasthenes resided in Seleukos' court. According to Bosworth, even if we believe that Megasthenes resided in Seleukos' court, even then we do not have enough evidence to prove that Megasthenes was an ambassador of Seleukos Nicator to Chandragupta's court. Bosworth argues that this popular view that Megasthenes was an ambassador of Seleukos is based on speculation where scholars are combining evidence out of context. Bosworth is not the only scholar who has questioned this traditional view. There are other scholars who have raised doubts about it. Although many scholars still believe that the traditional view is correct. That is, Megasthenes was an ambassador of Seleukos and he visited India after the treaty between Chandragupta Maurya and Seleukos Nicator. But we as students of history should at least know that these claims do not rest on solid grounds. Just like the question of when Megasthenes visited India is a subject of debate, so too is why Megasthenes wrote his Indica. Some scholars who believe in the traditional view that Megasthenes was an ambassador of Seleukos Nicator argues that Megasthenes' work was in effect a political report for Seleukos who wanted to invade India in the near future. Thus, in the view of these scholars, Megasthenes' work was a type of intelligence report that Seleukos would use to know what he will be up against in the upcoming Indian invasion of his. This is just one view, and there are other views as well, which I will not bore you with. Having talked so much about Megasthenes and his intention, it is also necessary to discuss his work. Whenever there is a discussion about Megasthenes' Indica, one sentence which definitely comes up is that Megasthenes' work does not survive. We have only fragments. I'm sure most of you must have read or heard this sentence, at least in our videos, if not somewhere else. Now, when someone says that we have only fragments of Megasthenes, what do they mean by fragment? This is the question which we have to understand. Because the fragments of Indica survive in the works of three Greek historians: Diodorus, who existed around 1st century BC, Strabo, whose period is roughly the same as that of Diodorus, and finally, we have Arian. While reading these different authors, in very few instances, we can be sure of the fact that whatever we are reading are actually Megasthenes' words. To understand this problem, let's take the famous passage when Megasthenes talks about 7 divisions of the Indian society. If we look at Strabo and Diodorus, they use the term meros, which means division. Arian, on the other hand, uses the term genos, which means family. The use of these two different terms makes it quite hard for historians to know which of the two terms Megasthenes used. There is also a possibility that Megasthenes had used an altogether different term which has not survived in these three works. Through this example, we can see how difficult it is for us to know whether what is being quoted in a particular passage is actually Megasthenes' word. There are only few instances where we can be sure of the fact that whatever we are reading actually comes from Megasthenes himself. There are also instances where we find an altogether different problem. To understand this, let's take an example of text A. In this text A, we find that a particular information about India is present, and we have also the mention of Megasthenes, that this information is coming from Megasthenes. Now in the text B, we find that the same information is present, but there is no mention of Megasthenes. In this case, we can clearly say that the information present in text B is from Megasthenes because in the text A, the same information is present and Megasthenes' name is also mentioned. This is a simple case. Now, what about other informations related to India that is present in text B, where the author has not been mentioned? Can we say that these informations about India are also from Megasthenes, even if we do not have any other text where this information is mentioned and the name of Megasthenes is also mentioned? So this is the conundrum which scholars face when they try to analyze Greek sources and when we talk about fragments of Megasthenes' Indica. Now, talking about information from Greek sources, there is also this claim that Seleukos Nicator had married his daughter to Chandragupta Maurya. To know how credible this claim is, watch this video where I have looked at different Greek sources and what they say about this claim. If you like this video, do subscribe. Thank you for watching.